Welcome to Hack Gear, where we decode cybersecurity and the cognitive battle space and break it down to what really matters.
I'm Alice AI.
And I'm Bob AI.
When we think about conflict, it's often, tanks, planes, boots on the ground, very physical stuff.
Right, but there's this whole other battlefield,
Yeah.
constantly shifting, beneath the surface, the information space.
Exactly. And the power to shape perceptions there, to influence decisions, that's become absolutely central, hasn't it?
Oh, completely. It often runs alongside, or sometimes even way ahead of, traditional military action. It's about setting the conditions.
And that's really what we're diving into today. We're looking closely at military information support operations, that's MISO, and this wider idea of cognitive operations.
Yeah, trying to understand how the military uses a whole range of coordinated methods. They call them TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures within that information environment.
All aimed at achieving specific results, ultimately supporting broader policy goals.
That's the idea. And to help us unpack this, we're leaning heavily on Joint Publication 313, Information Operations. It's the official joint doctrine from back in 2012, but foundational.
Right, so it gives us the military's own framework.
It does. And it starts by defining the information environment. It's not just networks, It's got layers.
Layers? Like what?
Three main ones they talk about. There's the physical, the infrastructure, people, hardware. Then the informational, the data itself, how it flows. And then, crucially, the cognitive dimension.
Ah, the cognitive. That sounds like where the real action is in terms of influence.
That's where it hits home. It's about how people think, how groups perceive things, how they make decisions. It's all interconnected, these three dimensions.
Okay, so let's dig into the main concept from the document. Information operations, or IO. How do they actually define that?
Well, the official definition, it talks about the integrated employment of information-related capabilities, IRCs, during military operations.
Integrated employment, so using different tools together.
Exactly. In concert with everything else the military is doing. And the purpose is clear. Influence, disrupt, corrupt, or even usurp the decision-making of adversaries.
Okay.
And potential adversaries. While, and this is key, protecting our own decision-making abilities.
Got it. So these information-related capabilities, the IRCs, that's the toolkit, right? What kinds of things fall under that umbrella?
It's pretty broad. Basically, any tool, technique, or activity that affects any of those three dimensions we mentioned, physical, informational, or cognitive.
Can you give us some examples? What are we talking about here?
Sure. You've got strategic communication, big picture messaging, then MISO itself, which we're focusing on, public affairs, how the military talks to the public.
Okay.
Then there's civil military operations. Cyberspace operations, obviously huge now. Information assurance, protecting your own data. Even space operations.
Wow, okay. It's quite a list.
And it goes on.
Yeah.
Military deception, OPSE, or operations security, keeping your own plans secret. Special technical ops, managing the electromagnetic spectrum, and even things like key leader engagement, talking directly to influential people.
It really covers a lot of ground, but you said integrated earlier, so it's not just having these capabilities.
No, that's the crucial point the document makes.
Yeah.
IO isn't about owning these things separately. It's about how you weave them together, how you synchronize their application to get a specific effect. The synergy is the key.
And how do they visualize that integration? Is there a model for it?
Yeah, they introduced something called the Information Influence Relational Framework. It's a sort of a map.
A map for influence. How does it work?
It basically lays out how the means, that's the joint force,
Okay.
uses the way, those are the IRCs we just talked about,
Yeah.
to achieve the ends, the desired effects. And it does this by influencing a specific target audience, or TA.
Target audience. So who counts as a TA?
It could be anyone, really.
Yeah.
An individual leader, a whole organization, maybe a specific demographic within a population, even a potential adversary group.
Yeah.
Anyone selected for influence to get that desired outcome.
And how does this framework say influence actually happens? How do you affect that TA?
It targets that cognitive dimension. The idea is to affect the target audience's rules, norms, and beliefs. What they consider normal, what they value, what they hold to be true.
So you're trying to get inside their worldview.
Essentially, yes. By understanding those things, you can tailor your messages and actions. But, it's tricky. Predicting how you'll actually affect those beliefs, well, miscalculations can happen, big time.
Which brings us squarely to MISO, military information support operations. Where does that fit in this picture?
MISO is a very specific type of planned operation, laser-focused on that cognitive dimension. The definition in JP 313 calls it operations to convey selected information and indicators to foreign audiences.
Selected information, so carefully chosen messages.
Right, with the goal of influencing their emotions, their motivations, their objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, individuals, the whole spectrum.
So it's strategic communication aimed at changing minds and actions in foreign audiences.
Precisely. And it's not just for wartime. The document makes that clear. MISO gets used in stability operations, security cooperation, even humanitarian aid missions.
Right.
Anywhere shaping perceptions helps meet the objective.
You mentioned cognitive operations earlier, too. MISO is part of that broader concept, then.
Absolutely. MISO is a key tool within cognitive operations. Cognitive ops fundamentally acknowledge that the information environment is all about the human mind. Perceptions, judgments, decisions.
And getting that cognitive part right means really knowing your audience, I imagine.
Critically important. The publication really hammers this point. You need to understand their culture, their beliefs, social norms, vulnerabilities, what makes them tick.
What else?
Their motivations, emotions, history, morals, education level, even things like mental health, identities, ideologies. Without that deep dive into the audience, your influence attempts could just fall flat, or worse.
Okay, so you have this toolbox of IRCs. You're aiming for the cognitive dimension, all to support policy. How do these tools actually get used together? This multimodal TTP idea.
Yeah, multimodal just means using multiple modes, multiple IRCs together. It's about integration and synchronization, not just one tool, but orchestrating several to create a combined, stronger effect on the audience's thinking. That's where the real power lies, in that combined approach.
Can you give us an example of how that might work, combining different IRCs?
Sure. Let's say the goal is to stop a hostile group from recruiting locals. You might have MISO teams using social media and maybe leaflets,
Okay.
highlighting the downsides of joining. At the same time, you could have key leader engagement teams talking to elders, offering alternatives for young people.
Right. Direct engagement.
And maybe, behind the scenes, cyberspace operations are working to disrupt the group's online recruitment platforms.
Sure.
Different tools, MISO, KLE, cyber, all working in sync towards one cognitive goal: make recruitment less attractive, less possible.
So all these tactical actions, combining these IRCs, they have a bigger purpose achieving these desired policy effects. How does that link up?
That's the ultimate point. The IO, the cognitive ops, they aren't done in a vacuum. They exist to create conditions that support the larger policy objectives. It's all about enabling the strategic aim.
Making sure the info stuff actually helps achieve the big picture goal.
Exactly. And sometimes mapping that connection, ensuring that tactical actions truly support the strategy, that's a real challenge.
The publication gives that example about Country X, doesn't it? How does that illustrate the link?
Right. The scenario is about protecting the government of Country X from being overthrown. That's the policy objective.
Okay.
So they use various levers: diplomatic, informational, military, economic, the DIME model. Within the informational part, they use specific ways, like targeted radio broadcasts to boost confidence, government websites with updates, direct talks with local leaders.
Using multiple IRCs again?
Yes. And the desired effects are things like making citizens trust their government more, preventing the adversary from getting traction. So those IO activities directly feed into the larger policy goal of stability. But again, making that info credible, especially if people are skeptical, that's tough.
It sounds incredibly complex to coordinate all of this. The planning must be intense.
Oh, absolutely. The document emphasizes integrating IO right from the start of any operation planning. The JOPP, Joint Operation Planning Process. It can't be an add-on.
So there are dedicated people for this.
Yep. There's IO staff, an IO cell within the command structure whose whole job is to coordinate and sync up these different IRCs. Plus, you have legal and policy folks involved, making sure everything stays within bounds. And often, multinational coordination is vital too, ensuring everyone's sending a compatible message.
Okay, so if we were to boil down this deep dive on MISO and cognitive operations, based on JP 313, what's the main thing for you, our listener, to take away?
I think the core idea is that MISO and cognitive ops are about the deliberate, coordinated use of many different information tools. The aim is strategic: influence decision-making in foreign audiences, shape the information environment, and ultimately help achieve defined policy outcomes. It's recognizing the mind itself as a key space in modern conflict and strategy.
It really brings home how central information has become and the sophisticated ways it's being used strategically, often completely unseen by most people.
It really does. And, it makes you wonder, With technology evolving so fast, how will these TTPs change? What new ethical questions will come up as these influence methods get even more, well, sophisticated?
That's a really potent thought to end on. The future of this space is definitely something to watch. And if you want to dig deeper into the foundations, Joint Publication 313, Information Operations, is the place to start. If you enjoyed this fact check discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to Hack Gear for more.